everybody for having me this morning. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all, dialoguing and critically reflecting on making CSI matter. The last 9 months have given us a lot of pause for think, haven't they? The combined 20th anniversary of democracy in South Africa, combined with the death of Nelson Mandela, have caused many of us, particularly those of us who work on social change, to reflect on history and possibility, reflect on where we've come from, what we've achieved in this precious 20 years, and where the future might take us. The events have caused me to reflect on the kind of courage that it takes to bring about change, and I was really happy when I heard you talking about courage, Godwin. They've caused me to reflect on troublemaking. That was his name, after all. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and Rolihlahla means troublemaker in Xhosa. He was, of course, the world's greatest troublemaker, passionate and principled, alternatively revered and reviled, loved, and ultimately lionized at his death. He has become a global symbol of moral courage. But at his essence, he was a troublemaker. I fancied myself a little bit of a troublemaker when I came to South Africa 20 years ago. I bucked convention to leave my very comfortable Midwestern American life to come here, to be a witness to the end of apartheid. Because me and so many other people like me believed that this was one of the world's greatest experiments in social transformation. Could a country really make itself new again? As I made the journey over here, I believed that I possessed a certain kind of bravery, a bravery to speak out against injustice, or at the very least to stand beside the oppressed. In simplest terms, I believed that I would do the right thing. That's why we get into this work, isn't it? Because in one way or another, we're compelled by injustice, by suffering, by oppression. And for a while, I really believed that I was a brave world changer, working as I did for a human rights law firm here in South Africa, and then joining up with a capacity building organization that sought to empower local organizations to bring about social change. I think it was easy to feel brave in South Africa from 1994 to 1997, when the possibilities for change at once felt endless, but somehow within reach. It was only when I was asked to go to Zimbabwe in 1997 to run an HIV/AIDS program that I really began to ask questions. To ask questions of myself, and to ask questions of the industry that I was working for. I was put in charge of a $5 million program whose job was to try to reduce HIV/AIDS in Zimbabwe. I thought I had my dream job at age 27 because I had big money and I had a big problem. And what more could a well-intentioned do-gooder ask for? It didn't take me long to learn. To learn that development is a multi-billion-dollar business with all the politics, bureaucracy, and conventions of any other business. It didn't take me long to learn as a director at age 27 that my job in this business was to move money. Because if I didn't move money, then nobody else higher up than me got money either. And the key at every level of this business is securing as much money as you can possibly get. I learned that my client was my donor, more than anybody else that I was trying to serve, because my donor was the one who paid my salary and kept my organization afloat. So as a director looking after this organization, I needed first and foremost to please my donor. That far from a collection of rogues and risk takers, this business is actually incredibly conservative. That we reward the technocrats and the bureaucrats who produce the tidiest reports and write the prettiest proposals. I learned that the key byword in development is compliance. Compliance became a word I spoke almost every day. Donor compliance. And I learned that when you're so preoccupied as a young, well-intentioned director with compliance, it is extremely hard to channel even the slightest bit of defiance. I sat in the middle of the world's biggest HIV/AIDS epidemic at a time when that country was just starting to fall apart. And I spent most of my time pushing paper. I ran really beautiful workshops. Everybody in Zimbabwe said that they were some of the best. And really, really well-conceived trainings. If success had been measured in flip chart paper, I would have been a rock star. I whistled while Rome burned, and my donor loved me. Mostly because I moved money efficiently while perpetuating the belief that progress was being made, even though I and everyone around me had no real-time, useful data to tell us if we were really making progress, to tell us if we were really impacting the bottom line. We had no idea. So we carried on every day, doing the best that we could and making everything look as efficient and as tidy as possible. Mostly, my donor loved me because I didn't cause any trouble. But how I wish I had. My biggest regret is that I didn't cause a single bit of trouble in Zimbabwe. Just once, I wish that I had had a difficult conversation. Just once, I wish I had spoken an uncomfortable truth. I attended so many funerals for people who died of headaches. I held workshops with school principals who everybody knew doubled as sugar daddies on a Saturday night. I wrote monthly reports for incompetent bureaucrats who I knew would never read them, but I kept churning them out. I taught women how to put on condoms because we were all too afraid to talk to men. In other words, I and everybody else around me ignored the everyday misuses and abuses of power that perpetuate the very problems that we pretend to focus on every single day. I and everybody around me was so busy putting our heads down, trying to be clever and efficient and polite, that we forgot that social change is a messy, complicated business that inherently requires us to upset the status quo by challenging conventional thinking and by holding leaders to account. In other words, it requires us to address issues of power, and yet nobody wants to do that. Can we change our world without making some trouble? History in South Africa, and for that matter everywhere else around the world, tells us that the answer is no. 20 years and billions of rands later, many in South Africa are just as concerned about the country today as they were back then. And in many ways more so. Because we look around and we don't exactly know where the brave leadership is going to come from. Where will that principled voice be that will help guide us in dealing with what Godwin accurately described as some of the most complex challenges on the planet? The same is true all over the world. A world that is desperate for bold action and principled leadership, where we put our hope in hashtags to try to spur change. And so we carry on. We keep putting more and more resources into plugging gaps in social services, and guess what? More gaps emerge. We keep writing proposals for very tidy A plus B equals C solutions to intractable social problems, even though all of us in this room know that those sums usually don't add up. We fill out one log frame after another, even though that we know that some of the most meaningful social change is neither logical nor predictable. There are no tidy technical solutions to injustice and oppression, misuse and abuse of power. Only courageous ones. And who among us has the courage to take the risks required to really change our world? I didn't. And when I realized I didn't have the courage to do that job then, I left. Because that country did not need another efficient American aid administrator. It needed bravery and anger, and all of that channeled into passion. But when I looked around, I didn't see a lot of passion. I saw a tremendous amount of efficiency and not a lot of passion. And so every day since I left my job in Zimbabwe, I've been trying to find passion in my work again. Every day I've been practicing bravery. And I think bravery takes two forms: innovation and activism. Challenging thinking and challenging the powerful. We all like innovation. Innovation is good. How do we feel about the other side? How do we feel about activism? I heard a quote the other day that said, we all love visionaries, but how do we feel about revolutionaries? Does anybody of us want to be that revolutionary? Does any one of us want to support that revolutionary? And if we as a sector aren't prepared to support and foster either, then where does that leave us? Plugging holes and patting ourselves on the back, probably. But imagine if we actually brought the two together. Imagine if we actually brought together innovation, all that wonderful work that's being done now on social design, on entrepreneurship. Imagine if we brought the new thinking together with the activism. If our principles and our systems align to support South Africa's visionaries and revolutionaries to take a real crack at social transformation, not tinkering around the edges, but real transformation, knowing that it might take a lot of trial and error. That actually admitting up front we don't have the answers, but we're willing to bring our best ideas and try them out. Knowing that those best ideas might fail, but that in the process of being courageous, you accept failure. We are under so much pressure to adopt the posture of experts, to pretend that we have answers to things that we patently don't, that it suffocates us. And if we admitted up front that we don't know, but we are trying, would that not liberate us to really become the courageous risk takers that a lot of us, when we came into this business, thought we wanted to be? Knowing that if we go down that path, it might get us into some hot water. My goodness, we might actually piss somebody off. I think we're going to have to if we want to create what we want to create. Knowing that it might take a really long time, maybe even more than 3 years. Wow, imagine that, more than 3 years to try to transform an education system. Yeah, probably at least that. And though that long path is going to be winding and it'll have up and downs, but if we're together on it as visionaries and revolutionaries, what kind of possibility opens up for us? Could we get back to that feeling that I remember in 1995, when the possibility for change would once again feel endless, and yet actually within our reach? Because right now I'm not sure it feels within our reach. If some young Rolihlahla came to us for support, would we support her? Or maybe even nurture her? Or would we turn her away? Because her voice was too loud, and because she attracted too much attention? Would we turn her away because she had enemies and we didn't want them? Would we turn her away because she didn't have the English skills to write the fancy proposal or the money to hire the consultant to do it for her? Would we try to tame her vision because it was too broad and maybe even too wild to fit within the narrow conframes of a log frame? Hashtag the world needs more troublemakers. You can use that if you'd like. This new South Africa was created by troublemakers, and its future depends on them. And if we don't want to attend another conference in 20 years' time, wringing our hands about the state of our world, then I think we need to find a little bit of troublemaker in each one of us. Thank you.